I want to say before I start the video, a quick shout out to D Mike, Rapunzel, Airwalkers, and all the mods over at the Guardian Discord. Special thanks to them for letting me make these videos and post it on the Guardian Discord. And for those of you guys who don't know, there is a Discord for Guardian. So if any of you guys have questions about Guardian and I'm not live, if you guys don't want to ask in the stream, you can always head over to the Discord and check them out and talk to everybody in the Discord. There's a lot of players in there, a lot of knowledge going around. Um, so you can kind of pick everybody's brains in there. The link to that Discord will be in the description below. And yeah, so I want to just get started with my add-ons that I have and the reason why I have them. Okay. My add-ons are kind of more specific. The thing about skill add-ons, in my personal opinion, is that while there are some more add-ons that may be more useful than others or more widely used, I personally feel that it's really ultimately up to you, the user, based off of the skills that you tend to use the most. And so when it comes to skill add-ons, it can be very personal. It doesn't have to be um, exactly the same as everybody else. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the add-ons that I use and try to explain why I use them. And yeah, the first skill add-on I use is actually on her shift left mouse button, which is called, the English name for it is called Avalanche Strike. I use that skill quite often. I like to have, for me personally, I always like to have at least one defensive add-on from Unawaken and Awakening. So I put it on that skill. It gives me DP and evasion. It gets 4% evasion, 10 and 10 DP, both for 10 seconds. That's kind of why that's the skill that I have. And then after that, I use Omawa's Objurgation, so for forward R&B and Unawakening. But that skill, I like to use it a lot for trading, and it's a really nice skill even for movement. And so if I have to chase somebody, I can use that skill, or if I want to trade with them. It's a super armor protected skill, and it lowers their AP by 20. Just without an add-on, it lowers their AP by 20 for 10 seconds. So I'm always using that, right, to keep their AP low in PvP. So I have a 7% move speed slow for 7 seconds, which stacks with my passive. And I have a 6% KD chance. The reason why I have that KD chance is players that know how to play against Guardian know that that skill does not have CC. So a lot of times players will try to use some unprotected skills during that time. Or if I'm chasing them, chances are they're trying to just spam some movement. And so this skill, I have the slow to kind of keep them slowed, but then also if they're doing something that's unprotected, I have a chance at CCing them. It kind of comes in at a surprise. Nobody really expects the KD at that point, and so when it procs, it's amazing because it just gives me another win condition essentially. So after that, I have my spacebar skill. It's called Absolute or Claw Reveal. The reason why I have it on that skill is because I tend to use that a lot in PvE. Honestly, I tend to use it. I don't use it as much as I thought I would in PvP, so I just haven't bothered changing the skill add-on. But basically, I have 20 PvE AP for 8 seconds. That way, if I ever happen to do like a sidestep or something in Unawaken, I can proc that. Or if I use forward R&B to kind of get to somewhere else to get to the next pack, I can just quickly use spacebar, get that PvE buff, and then also gives me a crit damage buff. And then I do my regular rotation. It just adds a little extra damage to my rotation as my in PvE. Then the 10% down smash, I thought that I could potentially use that more often in PvP, but to be honest, I really don't use it. Again, like I said, I did this at the start, and I just realized I don't really use it as much in PvP as I thought I would when they're knocked down. So yeah, just keep going forward to my Awaken now. With my Awakening, I have my Shift Q. I use that in my PvE rotation all the time, and it's really strong. But also I use that in my PvP rotation when I get them on the ground. Sometimes I can just grab into Fireborn Rupture into God Incinerator and get the kill. And so that's why I have it there. I have a PvP buff and a move speed buff. The reason why I have the move speed buff is because if they happen to get up, which in Korea, even at 281 AP, it's not always enough to kill them with this combo. And so if they happen to get up, I have ability to move around a little bit faster to kind of get out of range. But also, I like to use this skill as a trading skill against certain classes like Musas, Mewas, and things of that nature. Dark Knights, Sorceress. I like to use that skill as a trading skill. It does a lot of damage, and when you're in that animation, you can click to move to stay and make sure you don't get any back attacks. That way, you don't get back attacked. And so this also gives me move speed. That way, I can kind of move around right after a little bit faster when I'm using it as a trade skill. The next skill, my Shift F, or in English, I think it's called Cleansing Flame. I have PvE AP and DP on it. The reason why I have the PvE AP is because it's kind of the start of my skill rotation for PvE. You guys can see that in my other video that I made. I kind of talk about the rotation that I use. And then the reason why I have DP on that is because it's super armor. And it's a real easy way to, you can use this as a trade skill as well. It lowers the opponent's AP by 20 for 10 seconds. So you're going to use this quite often too. And it's a real good trading skill. It's super armor. It has decent damage and it has pretty solid range to it. So having the extra DP not only might help me win the trade a little bit more, but it also give me extra DP if I need to do super armor rotation and keep super armor up. It just gives me some extra DP to kind of help me survive, at least a little bit. Now, the next skill, Fireborn Rupture. In PvE, I use this a lot, but I noticed when I was first making this, when I was first doing the PvE, when I was first learning, I was getting CC'd from time to time because certain mobs, I couldn't quite figure out the timing on the CC. And so I put DP on this skill that way, because my DP isn't all that high. This kind of helps me if I do get CC'd and I get chain CC'd, like in say Akhman, Histria, Tortuga, Star's End, or Securia Ruins. If I get chain CC, at least the extra DP might help me a little bit more because it is damage reduction. So it's kind of useful a little bit. But also I get the 4% attack speed on this because it is in my PvE rotation and it is in my PvP rotation, right? A lot of times if I get a grab or a CC, I'll use Fireborn Rupture into Searing Fame or Fireborn Rupture into God Incinerator. So having extra attack speed when I link into those longer animation skills just helps me to finish off that skill faster without them getting up. So it's really nice. Yeah, that's my skill add-ons. And like I said, skill add-ons are very preferential, very personal. So use what works for you based off of what you use in your typical rotations for PvE and PvP. Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about some skills for Guardian. Bear with me. Since I play on the Korea server, I never bothered committing the English names to heart. So some of these I may say the key inputs, or I might just hover over them to see the English name. So bear with me if I don't say the English name correctly, or if I just talk about the key inputs. But yeah, so we're first going to start off with the basic, the most minimal skill points you would need for grinding. A majority of the time, I'm probably going to be talking about in-game grinding because, to be honest, when it comes to polyphores and things of that nature, literally you just need the basic stuff that I've already gone over in previous videos. So yeah, so let's talk about some of the skills that you'll need. So obviously you'll want your e-buff. In order to get your awakened version of the e-buff, as far as I'm aware, you actually need your unawakened version, correct? Yeah. So we're going to just go down this list and we're just going to go over some of the skill priorities and whatnot. So the first one, Fierce Disdain. Because you have your attack speed at level 1 or at level 2, I would recommend at least getting level 2. If you are doing places that you need that extra iframe, then maybe get level 3 for the cooldown. But if not, level 2 is fine because you can use it as movement. You don't need the Merciless Kick because it doesn't really do much for you. It's a super armor and it kind of locks you in place. So for PvE purposes, you don't need it. You don't need the absolute of her auto attack either because you don't really use that. You're gonna go down. You don't need her F skills. I know her down F gives you down attack, but it's kind of a long animation, and it's just not needed. The extra little down attack doesn't really do much for you overall, and you don't really have a spot to put that in your skill rotation anyways. So we're gonna go down her down E. You don't really need her down E. Maybe get level 2 just so you can get the foretold encounter, which is the little extra jump. Or you don't need it at all, but we're gonna get it because it helps you get to the next pack at least a little bit faster, and it gives you the accuracy buff if you want the bonus accuracy. Her spacebar skill. Her spacebar skill, it gives you the critical damage. It's kind of up to you. I think it might be worth at least the first one. It does also have a forward guard, which can kind of help. So I'm gonna at least put 1 point into it for the claw reveal. At least for the critical hit damage. And we'll keep going. For down LMB, Boulder Crush, you don't need. You also don't need her down LMB RMB Savage Hack. Her jump, you definitely don't need, so you don't have to skill into it. Her shift LMB, for awakening purposes, you actually don't necessarily need it. A lot of your skill rotation is actually going to be in awakening. So you really don't need any of these. Maybe get the filter. Actually, you need Juggernaut all the way up to get the awakened version. You're definitely gonna need that. Her RMB, you don't need. Her Shift F Mountain Slam, you actually don't need. You won't need Omoa's Objurgation either. You actually literally don't need anything else from Unawakening. Her passive, definitely you'll want, so you'll want these as well. And then you scroll down to Awakening. This is where it gets good. Okay, so obviously your grab you actually don't need in PvE, so you don't need it. Her Glorious Advance, it's worth to take for the extra attack speed. And at level 4 is when you get the highest attack speed, so it's worth to take it. Searing Fang, with your shift RMB, it is definitely worth to take. If you watch the other videos, I've kind of already explained the skill guide, or I've already explained the combo, the PvE rotation. So it's definitely worth to take, and then you'll want the flow suppress as well. Infernal Steps, definitely not needed whatsoever. And then Scornful Slash isn't needed either. Some people prefer to use that to kind of aggro some mobs, but it's really not needed. So for a minimalist guide, we're going to ignore it. God Incinerator. Shift Q is amazing. Definitely worth taking. And there are a few ways you can flow into this. I will go over that in a little bit. And then Awakening Juggernaut. I would definitely recommend it. It helped. Excuse me, sorry. It helps. You can use it to get into Awakening, but I believe it might have a higher AoE as well than her regular forward F, which is nice. And it also has a little bit higher damage to when you're aggroing mobs. At least you do a little extra damage to them. But for a minimalist guide, you don't need it right away because it does have the same DP debuff, and I believe it's the same cooldown actually. Or it's actually a lot lower of a cooldown, so I would recommend getting it after all. I actually didn't notice the cooldown thing, so I would say you go ahead and get it. Fireborn Rupture, yes, 100% needed. It gives you the 20 AP buff, and it's just such an easy skill that you can use this on your hotbar, so you can go into Fireborn Rupture into God Incinerator without having the long wind-up time of God Incinerator. We go down to Scalding Thorn. She's really not needed. You don't need the skill in PvE, so we're gonna ignore it. Infernal Nemesis, it's definitely worth taking for the extra mobility. I'm gonna take it. Frigid Wind, her forward RMB. I'm going to say yes, it's worth taking because you can actually do the forward dash without the actual attack part of this for extra mobility. But at the start, because we're talking about the most minimal skill points needed, we're going to ignore it. We're going to go down to Cleansing Flame. Yes, it's 100% wanted. It's in the PvE rotation that I usually go. And then Dragon's Maw. Dragon's Maw is definitely worth getting. There are certain situations where you would want to start off with Dragon's Maw. There are sometimes there's a alternate PvE rotation you can use that includes Dragon's Maw, so I'm going to add it regardless. And then on top of that, If you're like at Star's End, it's real easy to incorporate this at the beginning as you're waiting for them to come to the crystals. So definitely worth. And then if you take Dragon Smile, you're gonna want Flow Howling Light. Sorry about that. And so this build right here is literally 994 skill points. Super basic, super easy. I'm actually gonna save this build, and I'll link these builds down below. And so now let's go into a little bit more that you can do, right? Um, so if you want to keep going, I mean, obviously, like I said, you can take Frigid Wind, and then you can take Scornful Slash, at least level 1, for aggroing extra mobs. You don't really need Scalding Thorn. You still don't need Infernal Steps. And yeah, and so that would be about 1020. Now, for PvP purposes, now we're going to talk about a PvP build. Go from the top. Obviously, you're going to want the highest level of Fierce Disdain, because not only does it lower the cooldown at tier 3 from tier 2, you can also get at absolute. It does a little extra damage. So, I mean, if you have high main hand AP, it could actually do decent damage. Merciless Kick, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, if you want it, you can. Some people might for an extra chance at CCing somebody, but honestly, I typically find that it most of the time actually is more punishing than useful. So I'm still not going to recommend it. If you want it, if you have the extra skill points, go for it. I still don't think you need the absolute frost strike because you're never really doing a basic attack with her. Honestly, don't understand why they add this on any class. I don't know any class that's actually doing basic attacks. Her F skill, again, I don't think you need it. I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe if you have like a bunch of extra skill points at the end, maybe get it. For down F, definitely don't need. It's nice to have just the basic F skill because you can kind of use it as a protected CC on the first hit. You can kind of punish somebody with it. But as you can see, when you level it up, it doesn't change the cooldown, so it's not worth. And then now we go to her Axe Throw. Obviously, you're going to want the absolute version of Axe Throw in PvP to have the high slow. That's the highest. The highest tier is actually tier 3 for the slow. If you want to do some damage, you get absolute. If you just want the slow, you can leave it up to level 3. So we're actually just gonna do level 3 for now. This is just like kind of the basics that you would want for PvP. Claw Reveal. Claw Reveal is nice because of the forward guard, and you can actually, if you do Claw Reveal and you hold left mouse button during Claw Reveal, you actually go straight into Boulder Crush for super armor. So there's actually kind of a protected rotation that you can do with Claw Reveal into LMB for Boulder Crush for the first hit, into Shift RMB for the Shift RMB Flow, which is a forward guard CC. And I was kind of using it on Domirara, and it was actually pretty nice because it's protected the entire time, and it's not just super armor, which means I'm able to block some of it, and then I also have a chance at counter CCing them. So it's just something nice to throw in there every now and then. You don't obviously need to do this all the time. It's just every now and then, just kind of mix things up. That way you're not super predictable. It's nice to throw in and chance at CCing somebody. But I would just recommend Claw Reveal regardless because of the forward guard on it. It's nice to kind of have some extra block there. Although her Q block is also really good. Her jumping, I still wouldn't recommend it at the start. At the basic PvP build, I wouldn't recommend it, so we're not going to have it right away. Her Avalanche Strike, Shift LMB, it's nice, but you don't really need it in a PvP scenario. I mean, obviously, the more stuff that you can get, the better, but you don't really need it right away. So I'm going to not have it skilled into just yet. I will skill into Sturdy Step. Having the highest tier of Sturdy Step lowers the cooldown by 3 seconds, right? Up to 3 seconds from 5 seconds. So it's definitely worth. Her Grab, you're going to need her absolute version of Chokeslam, I believe, to get Bone Breaker, which is her Awaken Grab. I personally prefer her Awaken Grab over her non-Awaken Grab. That's just me. But it's up to you if you want it or not. I would definitely get the Neck Impaler. I'm sorry, did I call it Bone Breaker? It's Neck Impaler. I'm sorry, but I definitely recommend her Awaken Grab. It seems to be more useful. It seems to work more often in Korea than her unawakened version. At least that's for me. And then we're gonna keep going. Her Beast Demolisher still not useful. Still, even with Succession, I was kind of trying to mess with this. I still couldn't find a really good use of this. Mountain Slam. So Mountain Slam is a good skill when you have extra skill points but for the basic PvP function, you don't entirely need it. You can use the first one to kind of use it as super armor, but you don't really need it right away. Again, with almost everything else here, I would recommend her forward R&B. Her forward R&B is so useful. You can you can actually get a skill out on for forward R&B with a knockdown chance. And it's so nice because it's such a good skill to use to lower their AP. It's a good trade skill. And then also if you have a knockdown chance on it with the skill add-on, it's just surprising because nobody really because it's not actually a CC in the skill. Nobody really it catches a lot of people off guard, so they'll use something unsafe while I'm doing this skill, and then I end up getting a knockdown, and it just increases my win conditions when it comes to PvP. And again, it's a really good skill, pretty strong. It's already strong without succession, and it's got pretty nice AoE to it too. And then we're gonna go to Shift Q. Okay, so Shift Q Black Blood Circle it's good, but you need to make sure you have to really make use of this skill. You're going to want to have high enough DP for the people you're fighting against, because if you don't have high enough gear, then it's not going to be worth using. You're going to be caught, and you're just going to be losing damage, and it just could potentially get you killed, and it could get you grabbed. It's baity, it's long animation, it could easily get you grabbed. So it's kind of it can be good, but at the start, I wouldn't really recommend it right away. It does have an evasion rate bonus, but it's kind of hard to get off from in just irregular PvP because you can kind of just kill them. So I wouldn't recommend it right away. Again, with the rest of these skills, you wouldn't necessarily need them right away. A forward Q is nice for a DP buff, but for a minimalist PvP build, you don't entirely need any of these. And then we go down to Awakening. Her Awakening is going to be kind of the same here. You still don't really need Scornful Slash for minimalist PvP. A really easy combo you can do is a grab into a Fireborn Rupture from the hotbar, into Shift RMB, which is Searing Fang, into the RMB flow. That's a grab, and then you do some damage with this with extra, what gives you an AP buff. And you Searing Fang, which is an incredibly high damaging skill, which is also a bound, into Flow Suppress, which is also a bound in case you didn't get the bound from Searing Fang, since the grab is a knockdown. Another combo you can do is Neck Impeller, which is grab, into Shift F, which is Cleansing Flame. After Cleansing Flame, you can either go to Shift R&B for the bound. You can do, if you have Scornful Slash later on, you can try to use this for floating. Or you can go into Shift R&B, like I said, bound. Yeah. So a basic minimalist PvP build would be something like this. Maybe getting Scornful Slash at least level 1 for the float, if you want to try that other grab. But pretty much something like this would be a pretty easy basic PvP build. So I'll save this, or PvP build, sorry. Save this, put it right there. And then now we're going to go into pretty much a skill build if you wanted the best of both worlds. If you wanted a lot of options in Unawakening. The cool thing about Unawakening, it has a lot of protection, which when you're fighting classes like Sorceress, Meiwa Musa, classes that pretty much don't necessarily have a grab but are constantly looking for some kind of CC when they're trading, and it can be in your face quite often, it's pretty useful to have more protected skills. So we're going to go in with this. You still don't necessarily need Merciless Kick. You don't need the bound. You don't need the F kick because the cooldown, I believe, stays the same the entire time. But when you go down here, so this skill would be worth to get at Absolute. It has protection. So like I said, you can do Claw Reveal into LMB Boulder Crush into Shift R&B Flow, Black Blood Slaughter. You can literally combo those three together. I will show you that in a video after. Actually, I'll show you guys right now. So we're going to go ahead and go open up BDO. Oh, look, I'm right here. So let me go ahead and edit settings. Let's make this full screen so you guys don't see too much basic stuff. Edit UI. We'll actually hide this. So our keyboard right here. And I will show you. So literally, if you do your iframe super armor into that, I'm sorry, it did my 100%. Sorry about that. So all it is, let's say you do your iframe super armor into spacebar skill, hold L and B into shift R and B, right? So what happens there is you have your iframe super armor, which is literally iframe super armor, spacebar forward guard, L and B for super armor, shift R and B for forward guard and knockdown animation. I'm gonna turn on all the effects so you guys can maybe see it a little bit better. So again, super armor, forward guard, super armor, forward guard, knockdown. So I know some of you guys might be saying, but what if they're going around you? Well, that's the cool thing with this. They all go based off of where your camera is. So it's real easy to keep your forward guards in the direction of the opponent at almost all times. I'll show you guys here. You know, let's say this is my opponent going like this. I can move my camera at any angle I want. You keep the opponent in front of me to hold the forward guard. Now that we did that, let's go ahead and go back to the BDO. That's why I would recommend spacebar, and at that point, if you want to use her down L and B, which again you just hold L and B, I would recommend getting it to absolute, because then it actually does damage and it's nice. Now in succession, you can do this in succession, but you have to hold S or down when after you do your claw reveal. You have to do the actual key input. You can't just hold L and B. And in succession, since it does more damage, you can actually just hold L and B for the entire 3. And you can do that as well in Awakening. I'll show you that right here. You can do that as well here. If you want to prolong your super armor, you can for all 3 and then do this. But I think it's worth mentioning, it's very risky because you can't go from her second hit into anything. As you can see, it's very it takes longer to kind of try to get out of her second hit, so keep that in mind. It has so like if you're fighting against a class that might be able to grab you, you might want to be cautious of using that specific skill rotation. Her down L and B R&B, I personally just don't like it. I've never have, so I've never really used it. So I'm just not even gonna recommend it. A rock slide, it is potentially usable. It's very scenario based. It's not the best skill, but it definitely isn't the worst skill in her kit. It does have protection, so it can help you get out, or if you are in large scale, you can use this to kind of disrupt, because it does have a bound. You can kind of use this to disrupt the fight for the rest of your teammates. So I would still recommend it. So the cool thing about Rock Slide is you can actually lock each skill. Let me see if I can show you in here. If you have Rock Slide leveled up, like so. If you have Rock Slide leveled up like that, you know, you just press spacebar and it does each individual jump, right? Well, you can actually lock. Let's say you have it like this, but you really only want to use the 2 jumps. You can lock the third skill, and now you only do 2 jumps. You won't ever do the third. Let's say you only want the first jump, and you never want to use the other 2. You can lock the second jump, and you'll never use the second or third jump. As to why you would even have it skilled into at that point, I don't know. Maybe you're doing like 1v1s and stuff, and you don't really want to use it after the first jump. You kind of keep it like this, and then you can just do this, and then just only do the first jump, and that's it. Use it only for the first jump, and that way you're not like stuck accidentally pressing spacebar and doing the rest. I don't know, but they made that change. Okay, so now we go back. Where were we? Where's the rock slide? Okay. So now Avalanche Strike. Avalanche Strike is definitely useful at this point when you're getting as many more skill points in here. It's definitely useful. It is forward guard only while charging, but it's pretty quick to use sometimes. And as you can see, it's kind of a surprisingly long range. Immune that. feel like he immune it. It did hit him, but it didn't CC him. It's a surprisingly long range. And as you can see, it kind of goes in a almost like an upside down Y. But it's kind of useful. So I would recommend getting it at this point, and then obviously getting it to absolutes for your potential extra damage on it. The cool thing about this skill, you can actually, in Unawakening, if you're charging it up, you can actually do an awakened iframe into your awakened version of this skill, like so, and you can keep charging it up. So that's kind of cool. And now we keep going. Still don't want this skill. You still don't really need this. I don't like Fervor or Juggernaut Smite, so I don't even ever take those. Again, Beast Demolisher, I literally cannot find a use for this. It doesn't feel that great of a skill. It just takes so long. I feel like I just don't even bother. And it's unprotected, so like if I want a bound, I'll at least have an F skill, Frenzy, that has a bound on first hit. Well, it's bound on first hit in succession. I think it's bound on, yeah, see. At least have this skill, which is super armor bound, whereas this skill here is unsafe bound on last hit, so this is not worth. Mountain Slam, definitely at this point is when you can take Mountain Slam. Again, it's super armor, so it helps you trade well against those classes, and it does decent damage, and it lowers their DP by 20 for 10 seconds. So it's definitely worth it at this point. At this point, Black Blood Circle, if you have enough gear, you can make this work. If not, you just don't really need it because you have your awakening version, which is a stronger version of it. But, you know, like I said, we're actually not going to skill into it right away. And then the next, we'll just remember to add it later on. Her forward Q gives you a DP buff. If you really want it, then sure, take it. So I'm actually going to take it just for the DP buff. The only issue about her forward Q, you can do it in Awakening as well. The issue is it's such a long recovery animation. So if you take it, use it in the beginning before your fight, so before you engage. Yeah. So these skills here, right away you don't necessarily need them. Maybe just getting this skill if you're going to use that combo. And so things of that nature, at around this point of gear, or this point, it'd be 1900 skill points. We're going to go ahead, save, build, copy, put it here, bam. Now, for everything that I would want, ideally, you would use your shift Q. This is once you get enough gear. You know, like I said, once you get enough gear to make this work, it's definitely usable. It's worth. At this point, you would definitely want to use down R&B. I don't really know. Shift R&B is nice too. Shift R&B, so the difference between down R&B and shift R&B is actually shift R&B is slower, but it has a further range. Down R&B is faster, but not high range. So in Unawakening, in 1v1s type things, Torso Ripper is really nice. In large scale, you can kind of surprise people with mutilation. But yeah, so that's why you would that's when you would actually take these. Here, Inferno Step still, I don't like this skill. It just doesn't really, it doesn't have CC in PvP. It doesn't do much. It's really not worth. At this point, obviously, you can take Scornful Slash for extra float. You can probably actually take it here at this 1900 skill point one. If you take it though, it puts you at 2k. But yeah, and then here you take it. You can take Scalding Thorn if you want an extra CC, but it's unprotected. Okay, so here's the really cool part. You can actually, when you pop your E-buff, you get 10 seconds of super armor, which means you can then start to use stuff like Scalding Thorn, Scornful Slash, her Torso Ripper, Mutilation. You have 10 seconds to use any skill that doesn't have protection, that would be a CC, and get a CC off with it while being protected. So it's really worth. So this is kind of like the ultimate. This is what, if I could build, it'd be 2300 skill points. So I'll plot that right there. And now we gotta go have all the builds, right? So this is a minimalist build for PvE. Literally with this build, you can go grind Ackman real easy. This is the minimalist build PvE/PvP. If you do run into some PvP, you kind of have it. And again, PvE wise, this is great as well. A little extra. And then this build here is kind of once you get some extra skill points, extra stuff you can work towards in PvP. PvE wise, I mean, you kind of have all you need in 1300 skill points. PvP, you can kind of start to mess around. You still have all you need really in 1300, but this extra stuff, again, it's just extra to kind of give you more survivability, more damage trading, more protected skills. And to 2300 is kind of where you're set. You really don't need anything else. Obviously, you can kind of mess around with other things, but you really don't need anything else. Yeah, so that's the skill build. I did say I was going to show you some animation cancels real quick. It's not fully an animation cancel. Like, if you look in her Unawakened Shift Q, it has a long startup animation, right? Well, there are ways to kind of stop that animation. So I'm going to show you now. You ready? So if you use the flow, which is this skill here, I don't know the English name. If you put Fireborn Rupture onto our hotbar, you could actually use Fireborn Rupture into Shift Q, and it's kind of a slower animation. And what's really funny is you can actually use, it's kind of weird. You know what? Let me check something. Okay, I see now. So Flow Suppress actually doesn't have a cooldown. And you can use Flow Suppress after you press spacebar L and B. Press right mouse button and you'll do Flow Suppress. But so it's super armor and it technically doesn't have a cooldown. But you know what? Yeah, so technically you can do that whenever you want. As long as you have stamina. And it's got a CC. I feel like that's probably a bug and it'll probably be fixed, but it is possible to do that. You know, it's just bam, bam. So if you ever want to get Flow Suppress off and your Shift LMB is on cooldown, or your Shift RMB is on cooldown, just do spacebar LMB into Shift RMB, or into RMB for that. So doing Shift F into Shift Q is kind of a little bit faster than just doing Shift Q. I mean, it allows you to go into Shift Q without lifting up the staff like that, because the staff is kind of already in the air, so it kind of bypasses a little bit. It's not as fast as your Rupture into Shift Q, but it is there as well, and that is full super armor, right? So that's Shift F into Shift Q, super armor. So something that you can do, I mentioned this earlier, that you can use the Frigid Wind just for the dash. It works because you ignore collision damage. You can actually use this to get behind somebody, or it normally ignores collision damage. I don't know why for some reason these mobs you don't, but you can use that to get behind somebody. You can use that on somebody who's charging towards you, or Meiwa Musa, to kind of move where you're at. And you can actually combine that with your iframe, kind of move a little bit further in PvE, or just trying to move further. Something else that you can do is you can use both iframes. If you use your awakened version into your unawakened version, you kind of go a further distance, and it's iframe super armor, right? So you can kind of mess people out with that, because you go a lot further. Or you can do, you know, your regular iframe and then backstep iframe if somebody's going at you. You can use that like that to kind of get behind them, or to kind of juke them out into a grab, or whatever you want, because you're still in range of a grab. If they are in front of you and you're from your original position, you're still in range from a grab, right? So like, let's say they're right there. If I go iframe, I'm still in range for a grab. Just keep in mind, the more you do it in the 1v1 scenario, the more you do it against somebody, they're going to start to figure it out, and then you might have to switch things up. But it's real easy to switch things up, right? You can go like this into one of these to kind of move your positioning into a grab. It's very easy if you kind of mess around. She has a lot of iframes to kind of help you out. She has a few iframes, or she has a couple iframes to kind of help you out. And the cool thing is, she also has her Phoenix Dive, right? Or Infernal Nemesis, which is also iframe. You can use this at any given time. Okay, so something I wanted to mention about Frigid Wind is be very cautious. I mentioned this in my last video, but I'm going to mention it again. While it's nice, the actual attacking part of this skill is not, it's not protected, right? So when you actually swing your big sword, or your big, sorry guys, when you swing your giant halberd, you're not protected. And on top of that, when you actually do your iframe part, when you're actually moving around, every time you appear and you're hitting them, you're not protected as well. So you can get grabbed, you can get CC'd in those situations. A very good combo initiation that you can do in large scale is if you pop your E buff and then use your Infernal Nemesis into Frigid Wind. That is all protected because you have your super armor from your E buff. You can go into a group of mobs and a group of players and get a super armor in like that. In order to chain Nemesis into Frigid Wind, all you have to do is use your Nemesis, and then when you're landing, use R&B to hit the attack part of Frigid Wind. Now, there is a risky thing about Nemesis. I want to go over this because some people may not know this. So originally, Infernal Nemesis, the recovery animation was lingering iframe. They took that out. Now the recovery animation is nothing. After you attack, when you're landed, when you're recovering, that's not protected at all. So do not stand there. Do not just sit there. You have to make sure you either link into an iframe or do something to be ready. Do not just sit there because you're going to get CC'd. I've already had a few people to ask me about this. But yeah, so just quickly try to get some kind of iframe off or something of that nature. Otherwise, you can get CC'd. So now Infernal Nemesis can actually, the startup animation, because it is kind of long, can be cancelled or linked from another skill, like forward F. If you press down F, you can go straight into Infernal Nemesis. Keep in mind though, if you have Scalding Thorn on, you're gonna have to make sure you press S into F and not F first, because if you press F first, you're gonna do Scalding Thorn instead. You can also use it as after Rupture. You get into it. You can also use it after, I don't know the actual name of this, God Incinerator. You can actually use it after God Incinerator as well. I'll show you in 8 seconds when it's off cooldown. Like so. And that'll be super armor into iframe. But yeah, so that's kind of that. I'm not sure if you can use it with Scornful Slash. We can check, but I really don't remember. We'll go ahead and try that. No, you can't. Okay. So something else that I wanted to mention is you can actually go from your Searing Flame into forward R&B. Sorry, wrong skill. It's not really useful, but every now and then you can probably fake somebody else out with it. So if you're fighting against somebody who might know how to play against Guardian, the first hit of Searing Fang is kind of long range. And if they see you do it, they might start, because they know it's unprotected, they might, if you have distance on them, they might start to go in and try to go for some kind of CC. So you can sometimes fake them out with it. It doesn't happen a lot. It really just depends who you're fighting. You can fake them out with that into a grab. Or you can just literally go straight into forward R&B into a grab. It's not really super useful, but it's helped me a few times in fights. But yeah, that's basically about it. Oh, actually, I wanted to mention something. So in Awakening, if you're forward R&B, your Frigid Wind is on cooldown. When you press forward R&B, you'll do your unawakened forward R&B, right? Which is called Omuaz Objurgation. Now, you can actually put Omowa's Objurgation onto hotbar, right? That way that doesn't happen if you lock the skill. The other thing though about it, the reason why I wanted to bring it up is you also, if you do your forward F, if you're doing your forward F, if you press forward RMB, you'll do your unawakened version, Omowa's Objurgation. But if you lock it, or if it's on cooldown, you'll actually do your awakened version, right? Now we'll do forward F, and now we'll do forward RMB. Now that's locked. You do your awakened version, Frigid Wind. So some players may want that option because, like I said, you can have it not locked, and if it's not locked, it only does the Frigid Wind when Omowa's Objurgation is on cooldown. Then it'll do Frigid Wind, but that's kind of a little bit more micromanaging than some players would want. So you can always lock it, and then you don't have to worry about that. And whenever you put the key input from forward F, you always do Frigid Wind, and you can still do Omowa's Objurgation. You just have to press the hotkey for it. Kind of something just up to you if you want to use or not. And then the other thing is, if you don't have the awakened version of forward F, every time you use forward F, it'll always put you into unawakening. But as you can see, you can no longer do Frigid Wind from forward RMB. From forward F, you can no longer do Frigid Wind. The reason behind that is because you can't do Frigid Wind from unawakened, sadly. You can do Omowa's Objurgation from awakening, but it's not the other way around. So keep that in mind. If you choose not to take the awakened version of forward F. Okay, so that's basically it for the skill guide. Hopefully that helped you guys out. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask down below, or ask on stream, or ask in the Guardian Discord. I will catch you guys later. Peace.